Hello and welcome back to another lecture around commercial radio. In the previous lectures, we spoke a little bit about how a radio station is put together, and we went into detail around a station manager, their roles, how you can get to be a station manager. What you should be able to answer for me now is, if I asked you to describe the role of a station manager, what is their role at a radio station? So that's something that I want you to think about, to see if you can answer that by now. Also think about the types of errors that station managers do tend to make. That comes up, and how they can guard against these errors to make sure that they don't happen again in the future. Okay, now from here, what we're looking at today is we're going to start looking at the 3 pillars of radio. So if you want to go to your textbook, it'll be on page 52. So we're looking at page 52 to 56, and this is page 4 of this is part 4 of 6 of the commercial radio landscape and commercial station management. So if we start with the pillars of radio, what do you think these are? What are the pillars of radio? They are as follows. The first one is programming and content, which will be managed by the program manager. The second one is sales and revenue, which is managed by the sales manager. And the third one there is marketing, which is managed by the marketing manager. So these are the big 3 of a radio station, if you want to say it like that. The 3 pillars of radio are there 3 areas of focus or business units that need to work effectively together in order to deliver the station's strategy and make it competitive in the marketplace. These 3 managers, the program manager, the sales manager, and the marketing manager, will typically, together with the station manager, make up the management team of a radio station. What we'll do now is we're going to break it down to look at all 3 of these in detail, okay? Because it's really important that you understand all 3 of these in order for me to make sure that you can understand all the different sections. In order for me to make sure that you can understand the different sections of what we'll be talking about, we're going to be breaking it down according to a car, okay? So every one of these sections will form a different part of a vehicle to help it, at the end of the day, move, okay, to get us to the point where it can drive. And if we start with the programming and content, the programming and content of a station would be the engine of the car, in essence. In other words, it's the content that drives a radio station, just like an engine. What is content? Content is the product of a radio station. So a business sells products, radio station sells content. If we want to break content down even more, it can be seen as the information relayed to the audience member. Programming, on the other hand, is what people tune in for. In other words, it's what attracts and retains the audience. While radio can entertain, educate, and inform, it is particularly good at facilitating interaction between people, generating and monitoring debate between people, and empowering good discussion that makes for great programming. It's the responsibility of on-air teams comprising of presenters, DJs, and producers to generate and execute this content. So what is a presenter, if we need to break that down? Presenters are the people whose voices we hear on air, those people that talk. So presenters are at the working end of the radio station as they engage directly with the audience, like I'm engaging with you right now. As radio evolves, this level of engagement will increase. A presenter does not simply turn on the microphone and speak about whatever is on their mind. I don't think that would make great radio. In fact, I think we will all tune out quite quickly if that is something that was to happen. Also, with the rise of social media and other types of electronic communication, listeners are not passively hearing what the presenter says anymore. Rather, they are engaged. Think about yourself when you listen to the radio. They're engaged in creating content with the presenters directly. A smart presenter knows how to motivate a radio audience to get involved in a topic that they're talking about. In other words, they know how to engage their audience. This type of presenter knows how to keep you listening. So this type of presenter knows how to keep you listening by telling a compelling story that makes you want to stay in your car once you have arrived at your destination and risk being late for work or class because you want to hear how their story ends. So that's what's called car park radio, and I mentioned it in the previous class. For a disc jockey. And yes, it's a DJ in a club and things like that normally, but some people still refer to presenters as DJs. And there is a reason for that. The word comes from old world radio, okay? So like I said, it's an older generation thing. Where music radio stations had presenters who played music on air using phonograph records. I don't know if you've seen that, but the old school radios, they literally played the music on these phonographs. So they did look like a DJ. Since then, technology in the radio studio has obviously changed significantly to the point where now everything is digital. We've even moved on from CDs, etc. So no longer do presenters play music from records or CDs anymore. Now, almost all the music that a radio station plays is scheduled using what we call play out software. Okay, this is something we'll cover later on. The term DJ, however, is still used by many people in the radio industry to refer to specialist presenters who are authorities in music and who often select recorded music that they play at events or parties. This is definitely a cool factor. There's definitely a cool factor attached to the term DJ in the radio industry. So we do still refer to some people as DJs on air. Like Euphonic would definitely still be a DJ on air. DJ Jazzy D would still be a DJ on air. There are still a few of these, okay? If we start looking at the producers, however, I don't know if you knew this, but there are 3 different types of producers generally that you get at a radio station. You most probably have only had contact with one of these or knew about one of these, but we're going to talk about all 3 now to give you a broader understanding of what it is that they do. Producers perform a variety of roles within the on-air team. So generally, the 3 are firstly a content producer. This includes specialist producers. Secondly, administrative producers, and thirdly, audio producers. These producers are managed by the program manager, okay? So they all fall under the program manager. Content producers are the ones that you would probably hear of the most. A lot of presenters on air tend to talk about their content producer on air as well. So they would mention names about who their content producer is. If we look at their job specifications, content producers are responsible for developing exciting content for the presenter to talk about and generate engagement with the audience. This includes lining up interviews, tracking down commentators on various topics, and controlling what happens on air, as well as when it happens. Usually, content producers work on drive time shows, so where the on-air teams are larger than the daytime, nighttime, or weekend show teams. A drive time show is the name for the time slot where the bulk of radio station listeners are traveling to and from work and are listening to the radio. This has always been where the largest audiences can be found. However, increasingly less people are commuting to work, or they're working flexible hours, which means less time is spent driving and listening to the radio. Think about last year with COVID. This changed completely. We saw a complete turn around with regards to when people were listening most. If I refer to drive time shows, I refer to the shows that are technically a breakfast show, so from between either 5 or 9 or 6 to 9 or 6 to 10, you know, that kind of slot. And the afternoon shows from about 4 to 7, give or take an hour. And also it depends on the country or specific radio stations programming. It is for this reason that content producers are often allocated to these all-important time slots. If the drive time slots achieve the highest audience numbers, then they are priced accordingly and represent the bulk of a radio station's revenue. Okay, so the most money needs to be made during these slots, during the drive time slots. So during these times, advertisers pay a premium because they pay for the most listeners. Once breakfast and afternoon show presenters have achieved that all-impressive drive time slot, which generally has the largest audience on a radio station, they will secure content producers, as these are additional resources to a radio station. There are some content producers who are specialists in nature, depending on the type of radio station and its format. These content producers have a particular area of interest and are typically very well networked in the specific area, making them experts in that field. For example, a content producer may be a specialist in news and current affairs. This means that they observe the news events closely and stay on top of movements in politics and economics, for instance, both which are major topics that affect mass audiences. Another type of specialist might be a specialist money, finance, or economics producer, and they are generally adept in researching economic movement, and they will have a deep understanding of fiscal factors that affect the country's economy and in turn the personal finances of the average person. So think about the Money Minute, for instance. In a music format show, a specialist producer may have particular experience and interest in certain types of music, such as jazz or house music. This means that they closely follow the global movement of those particular genres in music, intimately know the work of the most well-known members of that music community, and are well connected in their local music scenes, thereby enabling them to spot up-and-coming artists who are producing music in those genres. So that's a content producer. Next up, we get administrative producers. So these are the people that would be more admin inclined, or They are responsible for assisting the on-air presenter in processing their paperwork and making sure the show runs smoothly from a technical point of view. They answer the callers and they put them through to the presenters in studio so that the on-air calls are well-timed and make valuable contributions to the on-air product. They also create prep sheets, which we'll look at a little bit later, and record the names and contact details of competition winners and audience members who want to share their comments or stories on air. Administrative producers work closely with the sales team to effectively deliver campaigns that clients have paid for, as well as ensure that these are in line with the brief. They are responsible for delivering digital content during the show and keeping the on-air presenter on track and on time. So it's quite an important role that these people play. And then lastly, we look at audio producers. Audio producers are the authors of the radio station's sound. In other words, they are responsible for creating all the produced sound elements that help the audience to identify the station when they are listening to the radio. In order to do this, they record, cut, and edit sound elements, work with the station's voiceover artists, and utilize sound effects and other kinds of audio production elements. In a later section, we're going to look more. So at this point, this is all you need to know about an audio producer. You will still at a point look at an audio producer more in detail. It's not essential for every show to have one of these types of producers in order to deliver a successful show. At the beginning of their careers, on-air presenters will do a lot of their own production work. So I myself used to do a lot of production prep for the show that I used to present. So these on-air presenters, when they're still right at the beginning of their careers, they will develop their own content and manage their own admin, and work on a central audio hub managed by the station in order to secure audio elements that are specific to their show. As a presenter gains experience, okay, so obviously over some time, and moves up on the on-air hierarchy, it is likely that the station management team will supply more production resources to the show. This is because traditionally the on-air hierarchy of shows is determined by the number of listeners there are during a particular time slot. That makes sense, right? So the more listeners you have listening to your show, the more resources will be given to you. Therefore, as the number of listeners increases, the show becomes more popular and the potential to secure revenue from the show improves. This then justifies an increase in the number of resources available to the show in order to make it the best it can be. A drive time show, so again, this could be breakfast or afternoon drive, will have at least one dedicated content producer, as well as an administrative producer and audio producer, while a late night or a weekend show may have one producer who performs all of these duties. So that was the three types. So that was the three types of producers. So content producers help produce the content. Administrative producers help with the admin of a show. And audio producers produces audio pieces. Okay, quite easy to remember. So as I've mentioned, all of these fall under the program manager. So let's look at the role of a program manager a little bit. The program manager looks after all of the on-air team presenters, the producers, and the DJs. They hold contracts with all of them and manage them against different areas of success in terms of their content and how they grow their audiences. They also help the on-air teams to establish the types of content they will develop and where these will fit into their show. If we look at what a program manager does, a program manager's task. A program manager's task includes the following. So developing and executing a format for the station that is compliant with its license. What is this license I'm speaking about? It's the so this license is the radio station's class license. So every radio station has a class and a spectrum license. The spectrum license is the footprint, so where they are, where they can broadcast, but the class license gives you a breakdown of your radio station, what you're allowed to do, including the format, including how much news, programming, etc. Okay, so the program manager looks at this. Next, the program manager looks at the hiring. The program manager is responsible for the hiring and manager of on-air staff, both as teams and as individuals. The program manager will establish the on-air roster, so who will be on air, when they will be on air, and for how long. The program manager will monitor the programming across shows to ensure a level of quality and an alignment with the radio station's strategy and position. They also need to stay alert to all competitors' radio stations' activity to keep the station competitive and to make sure that the station stays in line with their competitors. A program manager needs to make sure that they are staying ahead of trends in radio to ensure that the station moves forward with the people who listen to it and that the clients that use it as an advertising medium. Program manager is in charge of maintaining a strong music library, so doing the needed research to make sure that the songs that are played on air are indeed what should be playing on air for that station's listenership. They are in charge of complying with the station policies and procedures, as well as with relevant government and independent body regulations and codes of conduct. And then lastly, directing the efforts of the newsroom. So it's quite an important role that a program manager needs to fill. In terms of next, the program manager also looks at a number of important administrative staff who put together and schedule various pieces of on-air content. Such staff include the following. So it includes scheduling assistants, on-air promotions coordinators, music compilers, studio engineers, and the newsroom. And if we look at these in detail, scheduling assistants are use specifically designed computer software programs to integrate advertising, music, news clips, and talk breaks so that the programming that you hear on air runs smoothly and according to the clock. The on-air promotions coordinators are the staff who design promotions for advertisers that will highlight the important messages that these client brands have to the radio station's audience. In this way, the on-air promotions coordinator can be viewed as the bridge between sales and programming. Their role is to develop campaigns for specific brands and clients so that they deliver on the station's revenue generation strategy. However, they are also required to make those advertising messages sound enticing and exciting to the on-air audience. Obviously, they need to make sure that people actually want to listen to this. An effective on-air promotions coordinator knows how to get the audience to listen to promotional content and knows what it takes to get them to act on the advertising message, which is also known as a call to action. Music compilers, they're the ones who put together the station playlist, thereby carefully deciding what songs you will hear and when. studio engineers are the people that ensure that a radio station's broadcast studio and all of its equipment are in optimal working condition at all times, and that they function as per the station's needs. Lastly, the program manager looks after the newsroom, and the newsroom consists of a group of journalists, writers, editors, and producers who put together the news bulletins and the sound clips for a radio station. In the case of a music radio station, the station manager manages the music compilers and the playlisting process. But in the case of talk radio station, the station manager is required to work with journalists, editors, subject matter experts in the newsroom to develop content feeds and programs with the presenters and talk show hosts that align to the station manager's strategy. And that make the station competitive and unique. A program manager's team may therefore look a program manager's team can look a lot like these two graphs. It can look a lot like these two organograms, depending on what type of radio format the station follows. If the radio station has a music format, then their organogram will look more like the first one there. But if the format of the radio station is more of a talk-based station with news and current affairs programs, it'll look more like figure 2.4. The program manager needs to ensure that the engine of the station, again, we said that if we look at a car analogy, that programming is like the engine. So the program manager then needs to ensure that the engine of the station keeps turning and that it runs efficiently and as effectively as possible. So if we just briefly look at these two organograms. So the first one that we said is for a music radio station there, figure 2.3. It's the breakdown is program manager, then a scheduling assistant and an on-air promotions coordinator under the program manager. And then from there on, it splits into show teams, so presenters and producers, music compilers, studio engineers, and audio producers. And everyone, again, falls under the program manager. If we look at the programming or program management, if we look at the program management organogram for a talk radio station, there aren't as many people. It's the program manager, then an executive producer, music compiler, and then further down, the show teams, presenters and producers, the newsroom, and the specialist producers for things like drama, religion, money, whatever it might be. So this was then the first pillar, okay, that we looked at here, the first pillar of radio. So programming and content managed by the program manager in detail. So in our next lesson, in our next lecture, we will continue with this and we will look at the sales and revenue and marketing in detail, okay? For your homework, please go and read up on page 45 to 60 from Keith, the radio station, broadcast, satellite, and internet. Okay, so that's independent learning, but it's additional information about this that'll assist you. Okay, and with that, it brings us to the end of this lecture. So I will see you again in the next one. Bye.